So, how did King Solomon manage to build one of the most legendary kingdoms in all of history? Well, today we're going to dive into a really powerful answer found in the book of First Kings. And it all starts with an image you probably wouldn't expect, a champagne tower.
All right, let me ask you a question. Picture yourself at a huge party, a massive celebration, and in front of you are hundreds of champagne glasses. How on earth are you going to fill all of them efficiently?
Well, you're definitely not going to do it one by one. No way. You build a champagne tower. You just pour into that single glass at the very top, and as it gets full, it overflows, cascading down and filling every single glass below it, tier by tier, until the entire thing is full. It's this incredible image of abundance. But, and this is key, for it to work, two things absolutely have to be true.
First, you've got to have a continuous pour from the top. That's kind of the obvious one. But second, and this is just as important, the structure of glasses underneath has to be totally stable and unbroken. I mean, if even one glass is cracked or just a little out of place, the whole flow gets disrupted. The whole thing can just come crashing down. So the point is, you need both a valuable source and a really well-ordered system. Okay, so with that image in mind, let's apply this exact same analogy to King Solomon's kingdom. It is a fantastic way to visualize how his reign became so incredibly prosperous and influential. You see, according to the text, when Solomon became king, he didn't just jump in and start rolling. His very first move was to meticulously, carefully arrange his administration. He was essentially setting up the glasses of his kingdom, creating that stable structure needed for wisdom and prosperity to flow through the entire nation.
So, how'd he do it? What did this structure actually look like? Let's take a look at the specific glasses Solomon put in place. These are the key people who formed the foundational tiers of his entire government.
So here it is, the cabinet listed right there in 1 Kings. You've got priest, secretaries, a recorder, the commander of the army. Every person is put in a very specific role. Now, this wasn't just some random list of names. This was the actual architecture for stability. This organized structure with the absolute foundation that would allow everything to flow from the top down.
And here's where it gets really interesting in a small but very telling detail. See this guy, Zabud, son of Nathan? He's listed as priest and king's friend. The Hebrew word there is kohen. Now, while it often does mean a religious priest, in a royal context like this, it can also mean a close confidant, a royal advisor. This little detail suggests Solomon's structure wasn't just about job titles. It was built on deep, personal relationships of trust.
But what happens when one of those glasses is out of place? To really understand why every single piece was so important, the text gives us the story of one guy on that list of officials, the priest, Abiathar.
You see, here's the deal with Abiathar. He had actually backed Solomon's brother for the throne. So when Solomon won, instead of executing him, he exiled him to his hometown. Now, out of respect for his past service to King David, Solomon's father, he kept his name on the official list. But in reality, he was totally removed from the power structure in Jerusalem. He was a glass that had been taken out of the tower. And this just brilliantly illustrates the long-term consequences. Abiathar's exile to this little village of Anathoth had a ripple effect that lasted for centuries. Anathoth became this hub for priests who were shut out of the main temple. It basically fostered this deep-seated grudge, this tradition of opposition. And then over 300 years later, a prophet emerges from that very same village, a descendant of those same exiled priests, Jeremiah, who becomes one of the fiercest critics of the Jerusalem establishment. It's amazing. A single misaligned glass created a fracture line that ran for generations.
So that's the structure. But what good is a tower of empty glasses? It's just a decoration, right? It needs that pour from the top. And in Solomon's case, that champagne was a legendary, divinely given wisdom. I mean, the scale of this wisdom was just staggering. The text credits him with speaking 3,000 proverbs and composing over 1,000 songs. His intellectual and creative output was just immense. This was the very champagne that was about to pour through his entire kingdom. And this wasn't just some abstract philosophical stuff. His knowledge was encyclopedic. It covered the entire natural world, from the giant, majestic cedars of Lebanon all the way down to the tiny little hyssop plant you might see growing out of a crack in a wall. He spoke of mammals, birds, reptiles, fish. He understood the whole system. And here is the result. That incredible wisdom didn't stay contained in the top glass. No, it flowed down through his well-ordered administration, filled the entire kingdom, and then it overflowed. Just as the text says, leaders from all over the world, people like the famous Queen of Sheba, they came to hear it for themselves.
The champagne tower was now filling the glasses of the entire world.
So what can we take away from all this? I mean, why does this ancient story matter to us today? Well, this brings us to the core idea here, what we can call the principle of overflow. And it's just as relevant now as it was 3,000 years ago. The main point is this: widespread impact, huge influence, it rarely just happens by accident. It almost always requires two things working perfectly together. You need a valuable source, the champagne, whether that's a new idea, a technology, or a form of wisdom, and you need a well-ordered system to distribute it. That's your stable tower of glasses, whether it's an organization, a network, or a whole social structure.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought. This pattern, it's not just in ancient history. Think about it. A breakthrough scientific discovery that flows through research labs and ends up as everyday technology. Or a revolutionary artistic movement that starts with just one person and goes on to inspire generations. Or a business philosophy that completely transforms an entire industry. Where else do you see this principle? Where else does a single, powerful source create a massive overflow through a really well-designed system?